The signal came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her observatory at the SETI Institute, staring at her monitor with trembling hands. After 15 years of searching the stars for signs of intelligent life, she'd found something that couldn't be explained by natural phenomena. The pattern repeated every 127 seconds, a series of precisely spaced pulses that carried mathematical sequences far too complex to be random. Within hours, observatories worldwide confirmed her discovery. Humanity was about to learn they weren't alone in the universe. 3 days later, they arrived. The Nexus Collective's ships emerged from hyperspace in a display that turned night into day across the globe. Massive vessels of impossible geometries hung in the sky like obsidian mountains, their surfaces rippling with streams of purple energy that seemed to defy physics itself. Their message reached every communication device on Earth simultaneously. "We are the Nexus Collective," the transmission began, translated perfectly into every human language. "Your species has been monitored since you first split the atom. You have reached the threshold of technological advancement that qualifies for absorption into our unity. Resistance is inadvisable. Submit, and we will guide your evolution. Refuse, and we will ensure your compliance." In the United Nations emergency session, Secretary General Maya Patel stood before the assembled leaders of Earth. The chamber had never been so quiet. "They expect us to bow down," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "They expect us to surrender our autonomy, our individuality, our very humanity, all in exchange for their guidance. They believe we will choose safety over freedom." She paused, looking at each face in the chamber. "They don't understand humans very well, do they?" The response was unanimous. Every nation, setting aside centuries of rivalries and conflicts, stood together. Earth's answer was delivered by a unified broadcast. "Humanity respectfully declines your offer. We choose to determine our own path among the stars." The collective's response was swift and calculated. Their ships targeted military installations worldwide, using precision energy weapons to destroy humanity's defensive capabilities. Or at least, that's what they intended. What they didn't know was that humans had been preparing for alien contact, both peaceful and hostile, for decades. Underground bases activated worldwide. Quantum computers that had been running simulations of alien attack scenarios for years began implementing defense strategies. And most importantly, humanity demonstrated why they were different from any species the collective had encountered before. In Mumbai, when alien forces disabled the power grid, thousands of citizens created a manual communication network using mirrors and flashlights, coordinating evacuation efforts faster than the aliens could track. In Rio de Janeiro, street artists used their knowledge of urban architecture to help resistance fighters navigate the city in ways the aliens' advanced mapping systems couldn't predict. The first real surprise for the collective came during their attempt to seize control of Earth's satellite network. As their ships moved to disable key communications satellites, they discovered that humans had anticipated this tactic. Each satellite contained a quantum-encrypted backup system that could operate independently, and many had been quietly replaced with decoys, while the real communications network had gone underground. Dr. Chen, who had first detected their signal, found herself working alongside military cryptographers to analyze the aliens' communication patterns. "They're too perfect," she realized one sleepless night. "Their signals follow exact mathematical sequences. They've lost the ability to improvise." This insight proved crucial. While the collective's technology was far superior, their strategies were rigid, predictable. Humans, with their messy, creative, improvising minds, began finding ways to use this against them. The first month of the invasion became known as the time of adaptation. For every technology the collective deployed, humans found unconventional counters. When alien forces used advanced force fields, human engineers discovered that simple electromagnetic pulses from modified microwave emitters could disrupt them. When they deployed autonomous drones, Teenagers with modified gaming controllers proved more adept at electronic warfare than the aliens' AI systems. Most importantly, humanity showed something the collective had never encountered in their thousands of years of expanding across the galaxy: the ability to unite and adapt in the face of overwhelming odds. Each defeat only made humans more determined. Each setback sparked new innovations. As the first part of the conflict drew to a close, the collective faced an uncomfortable realization. They had expected to find a primitive species ready for harvesting. Instead, they found themselves facing an entire planet of beings who looked at impossible odds and saw them as challenges to overcome rather than reasons to submit. The real war was just beginning, and humanity was just warming up. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a facility that didn't officially exist, Dr. Marcus Wong stood before a captured piece of alien technology. The device, no larger than a coffee maker, had powered an entire Nexus Collective scout ship. The room around him hummed with activity as scientists from every field worked to understand their adversary's technology. "Look at this," he said to his colleague, Dr. Aisha Rahman. "Their power source isn't more advanced than ours. It's just more efficient." He pointed to the intricate crystalline structure at the device's core. They'd perfected one approach to energy generation and stuck with it for what must be millennia. Aisha nodded, her fingers flying across her tablet as she documented their findings. "They're like a species that learned to build the perfect sword and never invented the gun. They've stopped innovating." She paused, a smile forming on her face. "And that's their weakness." The underground facility, dubbed Nova Station by its residents, was one of dozens worldwide. Each housed thousands of people: scientists, engineers, soldiers, and civilians, all working together to find ways to fight back against the collective. What the aliens saw as primitive hiding holes were actually humanity's greatest think tanks. In a nearby workshop, former auto mechanic Tony Martinez worked alongside quantum physicist Dr. Emily Chen, combining his practical knowledge of hydraulics with her understanding of alien shield frequencies. Together, they had created a weapon that could breach collective armor using modified pressure washers and salvage alien power cells. "It's not elegant," Tony said, wiping grease from his hands. "But it works. Their shields are calibrated for energy weapons and kinetic impacts. They never considered we'd use water pressure." The breakthrough came 3 months into the occupation. In Nova Station's central lab, a team led by Dr. Wong made a stunning discovery. "Their entire technology base operates on quantum entanglement," he explained to the facility's leaders. "Everything they build is connected to everything else. It's incredibly efficient, but it's also their greatest vulnerability." The implications were enormous. The collective's technological unity, which they saw as their greatest strength, could become their undoing. Humanity's disparate, often incompatible technologies suddenly became an advantage. The aliens couldn't hack systems that used different operating principles, couldn't predict responses from machines that followed different rules. Innovation flourished in these underground spaces. A group of video game developers created combat simulators that helped train resistance fighters to exploit gaps in alien combat patterns. Botanists found ways to grow food in underground hydroponic gardens, ensuring the resistance would never starve. Even children contributed, their unrestrained imagination sometimes leading to breakthrough ideas that adults would never have considered. But life underground wasn't easy. Space was tight, resources were limited, and the constant threat of discovery hung over everyone. Yet these constraints only fueled human creativity. Every problem became a challenge to overcome, every limitation an opportunity to innovate. In one corner of Nova Station, a team of linguists and anthropologists studied collective communications, building a psychological profile of their adversaries. "They think as one," Dr. Sarah Chen, who had first detected their arrival, reported. "Their unity is complete, but it's also made them forget how to handle unexpected variables." This insight led to a new strategy. Instead of trying to match the collective's technological superiority, humanity would embrace its chaos, its diversity, its unpredictability. Each resistance cell began developing different tactics, using different technologies, creating a war the aliens couldn't predict or counter effectively. 6 months after the invasion began, Nova Station made contact with similar facilities in the Urals, the Rockies, and the Andes. A global underground network formed, sharing discoveries but maintaining operational independence. Each facility developed its own specialties, some focused on weapons development, others on communications, still others on strategy and planning. The most surprising developments often came from unexpected collaborations. A chef and a chemist developed a way to mask human heat signatures using modified cooking techniques. A professional gambler helped create battlefield strategies that even I couldn't predict. A kindergarten teacher organized the most efficient underground living spaces anyone had seen. As Dr. Wong stood in his lab, watching humans from all walks of life working together to solve seemingly impossible problems, he realized something profound. The collective had expected to find a primitive species clinging to outdated technologies. Instead, they had awakened humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome together. The underground resistance wasn't just surviving. It was evolving, creating new technologies and strategies that would soon take the fight back to the surface. The collective was about to learn that forcing humanity underground hadn't contained them. It had pressure forged them into something stronger. Colonel Diana Santos stood on the roof of a ruined skyscraper in Singapore, watching storm clouds gather over the city. The monsoon season was approaching, but these weren't natural storm clouds. They were part of Operation Stormbreaker, humanity's first coordinated global offensive against the Nexus Collective. Status report, she whispered into her quantum-encrypted communicator, a device that looked like a simple throat lozenge adhered to her larynx. The response came from resistance cells worldwide. London standing by. Mumbai ready. Sao Paulo in position. Sydney armed and waiting. A year of preparation had led to this moment. The underground resistance had grown stronger, smarter, and more coordinated. Now it was time to show the collective that humanity wouldn't just hide and survive. They would fight back. The plan was audacious. Dr. Wong's team had discovered that the collective's ships were vulnerable to certain atmospheric conditions. Their perfect quantum-linked systems couldn't handle the chaos of Earth's weather patterns. So humanity decided to weaponize the weather itself. In weather control stations hidden in mountains and deserts, teams of meteorologists and engineers had spent months preparing. They had modified cloud seeding technology, combining it with reversed engineered alien energy systems. The result was the ability to create and direct storms of unprecedented power. Commence Operation Stormbreaker, Diana ordered. Across the globe, resistance fighters activated their systems. The storms began to build. The collective noticed the weather anomalies, but dismissed them as natural phenomena. Their rigid thinking couldn't conceive of humans using something as primitive and chaotic as weather as a weapon. That was their first mistake. In Singapore, Diana watched as the storm reached its peak. Lightning crackled between clouds, but this wasn't ordinary lightning. Each bolt carried an electromagnetic pulse specifically tuned to the frequency of collective shields. The alien ships hanging over the city suddenly found their perfect defenses disrupted by what they thought was merely a thunderstorm. That's when the second phase began. From hidden locations throughout the city, resistance fighters emerged. They weren't carrying traditional weapons. Those had proven useless against collective armor. Instead, they wielded tools that would have seemed absurd a year ago. Modified pressure washers shot streams of water charged with particles that could short-circuit alien tech. Sound systems blasted frequencies that disrupted the collective's neural networks. Even children's toys had been transformed into weapons. Remote-controlled cars carrying EMP devices zipped through the streets, causing chaos among alien ground forces. In London, protesters who had seemed to be merely carrying signs revealed that their placards contained metamaterials that could bend light, creating confusion among alien targeting systems. Mumbai's street vendors used carts equipped with signal jammers. disrupting collective communications. In Sao Paulo, the resistance turned the city's complex tunnel system into a maze that trapped and isolated alien units. The collective's response was predictable. They tried to adapt their shields to handle the new threats, but humanity had learned from months of studying their behavior. As soon as the aliens adjusted their defenses, the resistance changed tactics. The storms shifted, the weapons changed frequency, the attacks came from new directions. Diana's communicator crackled with reports from around the world. Sydney's harbor became a trap for collective ships, the water itself charged with energy that disrupted their navigation systems. In Cairo, resistance fighters used the desert sand itself as a weapon, modified nanobots turning it into a swarm that could infiltrate and disable alien machinery. But the true victory wasn't in the technology or the tactics. It was in the way humanity fought. Each city used different methods. Each resistance cell operated independently while still coordinating with the global effort. The collective, used to facing unified opposition they could predict and counter, found themselves fighting thousands of different battles simultaneously. Hours turned into days. The storms raged on, powered by human ingenuity and determination. Collective ships began to retreat from major population centers, their perfect systems unable to cope with the chaos humanity had unleashed. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens were on the defensive. In her observation post, Diana received the final reports. Operation Stormbreaker had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The collective had lost nearly 30% of their Earth-based forces, not to superior technology or military might, but to human creativity and the willingness to use anything and everything as a weapon. As the storms began to clear, Diana allowed herself a small smile. The collective had made a fundamental mistake in their assessment of humanity. They thought pushing humans to the brink would break them. Instead, it had forced humanity to become more creative, more resourceful, and more dangerous than ever before. The message to the collective was clear. Earth wasn't just fighting back. It was turning everything, even the planet itself, into a weapon. The war was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had shown that superior technology alone wasn't enough to guarantee victory. Sometimes, the most powerful weapon was the ability to look at everything differently and refuse to give up. Dr. Aisha Rahman stared at her neural mapping display in Nova Station's central laboratory, her eyes wide with realization. "They're not just connected," she whispered. "They're one." Behind her, captured collective technology pulsed with an eerie purple glow, its quantum entanglement patterns finally revealing their deepest secret. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source. Maya Chen, a teenage prodigy who had been diagnosed with autism at an early age, noticed patterns in the collective's behavior that others had missed. "They never disagree," she had told Dr. Rahman. "Not like we do. They don't have different opinions or ideas. They're like a single brain with many bodies." This observation led to a deeper investigation of the collective's neural network. What they discovered would change the course of the war. The aliens hadn't just created a technological unity. They had evolved into a true hive mind. Each individual was simply a node in a vast neural network, sharing thoughts, memories, and decisions instantaneously. "It's their greatest strength," Dr. Rahman explained to the global resistance leadership during an emergency conference. "But it's also their fundamental weakness. They've lost the ability to think independently. They can't handle conflicting information or paradoxes. Their unity is complete and completely vulnerable." Colonel Santos, fresh from the success of Operation Stormbreaker, leaned forward in her chair. "How do we use this?" The question wasn't just tactical, it was philosophical. How do you fight an enemy that thinks as one? The answer came from Dr. Wong's team, who had been studying human consciousness in parallel with their analysis of collective technology. "We don't try to break their connection," he proposed. "We poison it. We introduce chaos into their perfect unity." The plan they developed was unprecedented. Using reversed engineered collective communication technology, They would inject human thought patterns directly into the alien neural network. Not organized attacks or coordinated strikes, but the beautiful chaos of individual human minds. The first test was conducted on a small scale. A captured collective scout ship was exposed to the recorded thought patterns of a jazz musician improvising a solo. The results were immediate and dramatic. The alien crew became confused, their perfect synchronization disrupted by the unpredictable patterns of human creativity. Project Babel, as it was dubbed, expanded rapidly. Resistance cells worldwide began broadcasting human consciousness into the collective's network. Artists created wild, abstract pieces designed to confuse alien logic. Philosophers contributed paradoxes and circular reasoning that disrupted the hive mind's decision-making processes. Children's dreams, with their inherent chaos and imagination, proved particularly effective at causing disruption. The collective's response was telling. For the first time, they showed signs of confusion and disagreement. Ships would receive conflicting orders. Ground forces would hesitate, their perfect unity corrupted by exposure to human individuality. But the true breakthrough came when Maya made another observation. They're not just getting confused, she told Dr. Rahman during a late-night analysis session. They're starting to think differently. Some of them are beginning to wonder. The implications were staggering. The constant exposure to human consciousness wasn't just disrupting the collective. It was awakening something they had lost eons ago: individuality. Some collective units began showing signs of independent thought, questioning orders, and even attempting communication outside their neural network. The resistance adjusted their strategy. Instead of just broadcasting chaos, they began sharing human experiences. The joy of discovery, the pride of individual achievement, the beauty of personal choice. These concepts, long forgotten by the collective, began to infect their perfect unity like a virus of consciousness. Dr. Rahman's team monitored the changes through quantum sensors. The collective's neural network, once a perfect crystalline structure of thought, began to show fractures and variations. Some alien units started exhibiting preferences, making choices that weren't perfectly aligned with the hive mind's decisions. The war entered a new phase. It was no longer just a battle of technology or tactics. It had become a war of consciousness itself. Humanity wasn't just fighting the collective. They were showing them an alternative to their self-imposed unity. As the project continued, more collective units began to break from their network, not violently or suddenly, but in small, significant ways. They began to appreciate Earth's chaos, its diversity, its endless variety of thoughts and ideas. The resistance had discovered something profound. The most powerful weapon against the collective wasn't superior technology or military might. It was the fundamental human quality they had sacrificed in their quest for perfection, the beauty of individual thought. Dr. Rahman, watching the neural patterns shift and change, realized they weren't just winning a war. They were witnessing the rebirth of consciousness in a species that had forgotten the value of thinking for itself. The question now wasn't just how to defeat the collective, but how to help them remember what they had lost. The Earth's orbit had become a battlefield unlike any in human history. Collective ships, their perfect formations now showing subtle signs of disorder, faced a swarm of human vessels that ranged from converted civilian craft to hybrid ships built with reverse-engineered alien technology. But this would be more than just another battle. It would be the moment that changed two civilizations forever. Admiral Sarah Chen, once a SETI scientist who first detected the alien signal, stood on the bridge of the HSS Prometheus, Earth's first true starship. Built in secret lunar facilities, it represented everything humanity had learned during the war. Its systems were a chaos of different technologies, some human, some alien, some a fusion of both, all working together in ways the collective had never imagined possible. "All ships report ready," her communications officer announced. The Resistance fleet was a reflection of humanity itself, diverse, adaptable, and impossible to predict. Civilian ships modified with weather control technology flew alongside military vessels equipped with consciousness broadcasting arrays. Each one was unique, a testament to human creativity. But the true power of humanity's final gambit wasn't in their ships or weapons. It was in the message they were about to send. Dr. Raman's team had made one final discovery about the collective's neural network. It wasn't just susceptible to human consciousness. It was starving for it. "Begin transmission," Chen ordered. Across the fleet, specially designed quantum transmitters activated, but instead of broadcasting chaos or confusion, they sent something else, an invitation. The message that pulsed through the collective's neural network was simple but profound. It contained the full experience of human individuality, not as an attack, but as a gift. The joy of personal discovery, the strength found in overcoming adversity, the beauty of independent thought, and most importantly, the power of choosing to work together rather than being forced to. The effect was immediate. Throughout the collective fleet, ships began to move in ways that didn't follow their usual perfect patterns. Some held position, others drifted slightly out of formation. For the first time in their history, the collective was experiencing something they had forgotten millennia ago: choice. They're responding, the communications officer reported, surprise evident in his voice. The transmission coming from the collective ships was different from anything they'd sent before. Instead of the usual unified message, it came in variants, like a conversation among individuals. "We remember," the first message said. "We had forgotten what it was to be one by choice," came another. "We thought unity required the sacrifice of self," a third added. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "You sought to absorb us because you saw our individuality as primitive. But you forgot that true strength comes not from enforced unity, but from choosing to work together while maintaining our unique perspectives." The space between the fleets hummed with communication. The collective was experiencing an awakening. Centuries of enforced unity were giving way to something new, a recognition that diversity and individual thought weren't weaknesses to be eliminated, but strengths to be embraced. In Nova Station, Dr. Raman and her team watched the neural network patterns transform. The rigid crystalline structure of collective consciousness wasn't shattering, as they had first intended, but evolving. Individual nodes began showing unique patterns while maintaining their connections, unity through diversity rather than conformity. The collective's response came not as a single voice, but as a chorus of distinct yet harmonious thoughts. They proposed not surrender or victory, but something unprecedented: collaboration. They had achieved technological perfection, but lost the spark of innovation that comes from individual creativity. Humanity had shown them another way. As the two fleets began to intermingle, no longer as enemies, but as partners in an extraordinary moment of transformation, Admiral Chen reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger. The collective had faced the end of their perfect unity and found something better. The war ended not with the defeat of either side, but with mutual recognition. The collective would maintain their neural network, but now as a choice rather than a constraint. Some of their members began to disconnect periodically, experiencing individuality for the first time in eons. Others maintained closer connections, but learned to value the perspective of independent thoughts. Humanity, in turn, gained access to advanced technology, but on their own terms. They would take the collective's innovations and adapt them in their uniquely human ways, adding chaos to perfection, creativity to efficiency. As ships from both civilizations began the process of integration and exchange, Dr. Wang's words from the early days of resistance echoed in Chen's mind. "They're not more advanced than us. They're just different." In the end, that difference had become the bridge to understanding. The stars above Earth now held not a threat, but a promise. Two civilizations, each learning from the other, would move forward together. The collective had sought to absorb humanity, only to be transformed by the very qualities they had thought primitive. Humanity had fought to survive, only to discover they had something profound to teach. It was the beginning of a new era, not just for Earth or the collective, but for the galaxy itself. The message would spread to other civilizations. True strength lies not in perfect unity or complete independence, but in the beautiful balance between the two.